So welcome again, my friends. So after doing the first objective, which is to create the conversations model, now it is time to create the conversations routes. So how are we going to do that? We're just going to go back to the routes right here. We're going to create a new file. I'm going to do it from start, from scratch, so you can understand how we do that. So I'm going to go conversation.routes. So this is our convention for naming every file. And then right here, we would just simply import and then express from express, and then also I'm gonna import a few other things that we need. Let me just import this here. So import trim request. Can I get that? Okay, I actually cannot, so I have to do it manually. Trim request. And then also we will need to use the auth middleware, because this functions should be running while you're like then. So auth middleware from, and then we're gonna go where? I'm just gonna go right here to my middlewares and then to the auth middleware. And then here, I'm just gonna go and define my router. So const router, which is equal to express, and then we're gonna run the router function right here. And then I'm just gonna go export default router like we always do. And then after this, we're just gonna define the route. So I'm gonna go router.route. So for this route right here is going to be /, and simply what we're going to do right here is just going to be a post request. So right here is going to be a post request. So we're going to use post, and then we'll use trim request, then .o. So we want to trim all the requests, from the header or the body, whatever. And then we'll use the auth middleware, and then also we'll create a function right here. So this function is going to be create or open conversation, okay, as I explained this in the beginning of this section. So we have to create this, so import, and I'm going to import it from, as I know I'm going to create it in the controller. So I'm going to go to my controllers right here. I need another file, which is going to be conversation.controller.js. so I have to create this file. If I click right here, you see this file does not exist, so I can click right here to create it. And now if I go back to the controllers, I will find the conversation.controller.js, and we can actually create that function here. So I can just, have an empty function right here. So I can go back and just simply go export, and then const this, and this is simply going to be an asynchronous function. You have the request and then also the response, and then next. So we already know every single thing right here. And then we're going to use try catch and just simply right here next, and then the error this way, and save. So now we have that. So we defined at least one route right here. So what we need right now is to add this route to our main routes. So I'm going to go back to my index right here, and all I have to do is just import conversation routes from this conversation.routes.js, and then simply I'm gonna add one right here, and it's simply gonna be the conversations route, and this is gonna be conversation like this. So we can use that now. So now it is valid. So what I mean by that, so now if I want to access this conversations routes, I have to go to HTTP localhost 8000, then /API, then /version1, then /conversation, then whatever route we defined right here in the conversation, for example, the main route, which is we don't need to add anything, and then we will go to the create open conversation controller. So right here, for example, I can just go const log hello from convo, for example, just to test this. And then I can go here, and I have to go, this was the auth folder. I can go to WhatsApp again, and then add a new folder. This one is going to be for conversation. Okay, and then I can go here and create a request. So this request is going to be like for create or open conversation, because we said we want to create a conversation, but if it does exist, we're just going to open it and get it. So create or open conversation, it's going to be a post request, and it's going to be to HTTP. So API version 1, then not auth, it's just going to go to converse. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but conversation like this. And now if I submit it right here, so it seems like we get nothing. So that means there is some sort of problem. So let me just go back here. Let me see what we have. All right, so we have certain problems. So let me just see. So cannot find the module of middleware. So let me just go back to the routes. So the middleware, where is it? This one. Okay, I need to add .js here. Let me save and see. I'll go down. Okay, it's listening now. Let me try again. So send. And as you see, we get an error, unauthorized, as we add the auth middleware. So that's something very important to understand. So now I can go back to my auth, and in the login here, I already have this token. So it's still valid because I was just recording a bit ago while we test this. If you want to, you can just send login again. And when you log on, you're going to get an access token. You can take that. And this access token is going to be related to this user, which is test6. So now if I went back to create open, I can go to the headers or just simply authorization and define this as bearer token. And then, you can add the token right here. It's the same. And then send. And now as you see, it's sending, but it seems like it doesn't go. There is something there. Okay, it says hello from conv. Okay, I console logged. I didn't respond. So it is, at least we know it's working. So as I console logged and I didn't respond here, but if we respond with something, we would have seen it there. So now that we are in this create function, so what is our objective? So I want to send a message or start a conversation, sorry, not a message, with someone. So what do I need? First of all, I need my ID. So I want to know my ID so I can see cons and then sender underscore ID, okay, which is me. When I can get that, as I told you, we're using the auth middleware. And if you use the auth middleware, it adds to the request the property user. And inside this user, we have the user ID property. I remind you again, because in the testing the auth middleware, as you see when you send something right here. So, where does it say this? This must be, was it a GET request? This route does not exist. I don't remember. I removed it. Sorry, that's why I cannot test this. But if you can actually see, when we get a response, we get a response of that user, but it's in the user ID. And it can actually remind you, I know this is important, that's why I'm repeating it. If you go to the auth middleware inside, this requested user we added has the payload, but the payload is actually registered in a property called user ID. How I know this? Because actually, if you went back to your auth, like the controllers for the auth, right here, you see, this is the GWT token we created. We added in a property called user ID. That's why I know it is there. So that's why I gotta go to the request.user, because they have the auth middleware, and then to user.id, the user ID. I hope this is, making a lot of sense. So now this is how I start a conversation. But now I need to start it with who. So the second thing that you would say is who I am sending it to. And I can actually send that in the body, for example. So I can see cons, and I can send it, sorry. So cons, and this is the receiver underscore ID from the request.body. So now I am sending with this, but I want to start the conversation with the receiver itself, which we're going to send. That means I got to go back here, and then in the body, I got to go row, and then I go JSON, and in here, I need to send a property that is called receiver ID, and here is going to be the ID of the user I want to add a conversation to. All right. So for example, if we don't have a property right here, we'll send an error. How are we going to do that? So I can go right here and check if receiver ID is provided. I hope I'm making a lot of sense here. So I'm going to see if there is no receiver ID, because that means who am I going to start the conversation with? I can, because I don't need to send like something to the user. I could just console log something or use logger. So I'm going to use logger. So, and this logger is going to be .error, and we could say something. Please provide the user ID you wanna start a conversation with. It is simple. And then I can just simply send for the user, we just simply response.status like 400. That's it. There's a bad request. We don't know what's going on, but that's it. So, or for example, you could call something like this, like go throw and then create HTTP error right here, and you go .bad request, and you'd say something like something went wrong. That's it. So it's like I'm chatting here to provide the false, word. So now if I went back right here and I try to actually send, so when I send, you realize, okay, we added the receiver ID right here, but if, let's say there is a problem, what? There is another method that is not found. Let me just go down and see what is going on. Okay, so it seems a problem here, internal error, but it does say imported from. Okay, so the logo also. So I know what the problem. I need to add .js here. That's it. So now if I go down, there is no problem. I can go here now and I send again. So when I said, you can see something went wrong. And the reason for that is because I didn't add in a receiver ID. But if I added something like here and I send again, I'm not gonna get that problem because I've provided a certain receiver ID. It might not exist, so we have to test that later. But as a starting point, we're checking if we provided something. All right, so we keep going. We're gonna get there. So point by point, we're gonna get there. So now the second thing, we have to check if there is certain chat that exists. So check if chat exists. So this is something very important. You want to start a conversation with someone, but if it's already exists, I want to go and open MongoDB Campus because I'm gonna need that. So I'm gonna open it so I can get like a user ID or something. So I'm gonna go const and then existed chat, and or actually convo, that's better. So as I am naming it conversation instead of chat, so existed conversation, and then or convo for making it short, and then I'm gonna use await, and I'm gonna create a service which called as conversation exists. Okay, so we're gonna search, we're gonna have a function that check if this chat exists. How we gonna check with? We're gonna check just with the sender ID because that's like me, and also the receiver ID. Okay, both of them gonna be needed to check, and then right here if we have something, then we'll continue. But first of all, I have to create this function. So where do I have to create it? I have to go and I gotta go to my services. So let me close everything here, then to my services, and then this is gonna be conversation.service.js, and then I'll go export, and then const, I forgot const, and then that conversation exists, and it's gonna be an asynchronous function that take the sender underscore ID and also the receiver underscore ID, and simply we'll do the test here.